Imagine this. The smoke clears on a European battlefield, and kings are counting their dead. And 1,000 miles away, in a quiet room, a single family is counting the profits. The connection between a bloody war and a banker's ledger is not obvious, but it is real. Because while emperors boast about glorious victories, the quiet math in the shadows decides who actually rules the world. And the answer, as usual, is not the guy wearing the crown. It is the family holding the gold. The Rothschilds. They sound like a myth or a secret society whispered in the dark. But here is the truth. History never hides. The Rothschilds did not build an empire by casting spells. They built it through an undeniable grip on money. Here is how it works in practice. It started in a cramped ghetto in Frankfurt in the 1700s. A man named Mayer Amschel Rothschild ran a small coin business. But he did not just want to trade coins. He wanted to trade power. So he made a move that changed global finance forever. He sent his 5 sons to the 5 most powerful cities in Europe: London, Paris, Frankfurt, Vienna, and Naples. This was not just a family business expansion. This was the birth of the first truly global bank. But kings and queens do not just hand over their wealth to strangers. The Rothschilds had to offer something nobody else had: speed. In the 1800s, information moved at the speed of a horse. The Rothschilds built their own private network of couriers and fast ships. They knew the outcome of a war days before the rulers did. That is the trick. Information looks like news but functions as a weapon. And they used that weapon to perfection. Let us strip it bare. Look at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. The fate of Europe hung in the balance. If Napoleon won, British markets would collapse. If the British won, their bonds would skyrocket. A Rothschild courier watched the British win and delivered the news to Nathan Rothschild in London. Nathan did not shout the news in the streets. He walked into the London Stock Exchange and started selling his bonds. Panic set in. Everyone thought Britain had lost, so they sold their bonds for pennies. Then Nathan quietly bought them all back at rock-bottom prices. When the official news of victory finally arrived, the market exploded. Nathan multiplied his fortune in a single day. The politicians win the medals. The bankers keep the money. But market crashes are only half the story. The other half lies in the glittering promise of government debt. Kings always want to fight wars, but wars are expensive. And when a king runs out of gold, he has to borrow it. That is where the Rothschilds stepped in. They did not just lend money to one side. They lent money to both sides. Because when you fund both armies, you never lose the war. The cost is a national debt that balloons by millions. Now a national debt is simply the gap between what a king spends and what he collects. And when you borrow heavily to shoot cannons, you are digging a massive hole. You can paper it over with patriotism for a while, but eventually someone has to fill it. Fast forward through the 19th century. Governments across Europe owed their survival to Rothschild loans. But politicians cannot exactly walk up to peasants and tell them they gave the bankers their future. That does not sell, so they needed to cover it up with taxes. The bank collects the interest, while the ordinary people cover the spread. It is the oldest sleight of hand in finance. The trick is universal. The results are always the same. History offers sharp parallels. In ancient Rome, the wealthy Crassus funded armies and fire brigades to squeeze the state for every coin. Just like the 19th century, royal treasuries were drained while private vaults overflowed. This is not just banking. It is redistribution in reverse. A feast for the lenders funded by a hidden tax on everyone else. The story of how they kept this power requires us to follow the money. They invented the international bond market. Before them, you had to physically move gold across borders. The Rothschilds set up a system where a piece of paper in London was worth gold in Paris. They made money invisible and entirely dependent on their family name. Think of it this way. A loan from a Rothschild did not just stay in a bank vault. It trickled through the supply chain until it built the railways of Europe. It funded the Suez Canal and reshaped global trade. They did not just finance nations. They financed the modern world. Every track laid and every ship launched carried an invisible tax payable to the family. Each interest payment was small enough to overlook. But together they formed an ocean of wealth. The winners are obvious. The losers are everyone else paying more for less. From royal palaces to dirty city streets, the line of who pays runs straight through the working class. But the Rothschilds survived because they sold a beautiful story. They promised that their wealth would keep nations from going bankrupt. That feels like safety. That feels like the adults are in charge. And on the surface, that logic is seductive. But here is what really happens. Nations lose their sovereignty. Governments lose the ability to say no. The protection is temporary. The debt is permanent. That is why modern banking is the perfect stage trick. It offers a visible emotional win now and buries the pain in invisible losses later. The kings got richer while claiming they were defending national glory. But the workers paid the taxes and the economy stagnated under the weight of the loans. Protection was not protection. It was financial captivity branded as necessity. The illusion relies on concentrated benefits and diffuse costs. One victorious army makes the headlines. Millions of citizens paying endless taxes disappears into silence. The winners are visible and the losers are invisible. And that imbalance keeps the banking empire alive far longer than anyone realizes. This is not about one family anymore. The Rothschild blueprint became the foundation of modern global finance. Short-term optics for politicians become long-term costs for households. Money has always been more than just numbers on a balance sheet. It is political dynamite. The next time you hear a government brag about a massive spending bill, remember the math. The money does not come out of thin air. It comes out of your wallet. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. The past left a trail. I'll show you where it leads.